Good evening. We are Chris Lee and Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14, presented by Stakes, here to talk college football, maybe some hoops, who knows what. And most of all, we'll get into whatever you want us to get in on tonight. So hit us up with your questions and your comments in the chat. I'm watching Blayne on one screen. I've got Florida A&M coming down the stretch in hoops on a phone here, and Missouri and Arkansas on the TV in front of me in the hoops. So, Blayne, we got a lot going on, a lot to cover. It's an exciting week in Southeastern Conference sports because we've got a championship game coming up and some good hoops getting started.
Absolutely, and including I'd be remiss. I'm going to go ahead and throw up our excellent, if I do say myself, our thumbnail that we had up here, because look at the man on the top left or the bottom left over here. That would be Mr. Bobby Petrino with the Texas A&M.
Could you not find a better picture of Bobby Petrino than that? Come on.
What are you talking about? That's Bobby Petrino in all his glory right there. Absolutely. That's
something, but
that is he's, in all seriousness, you have to be thrilled if you're a Texas A&M fan, because you're thinking at least that you're going to step out of the Stone Age when it comes to your offense and be a little bit more innovative, because for all the flaws and jokes and all that kind of stuff, Bobby Petrino can flat coach offensive football and get guys open in space. So I really, really feel like if Jimbo fit. Now the question is, Chris, do you feel that Jimbo Fisher, I know he's brought in Bobby Petrino, he's given him the title of OC. Do you think he'll fully relinquish and just get his fingers out of the pie, so to speak?
Coaches who have a hard time relinquishing control generally still have a hard time relinquishing control. But, look, if you're Jimbo Fisher, you're smart about this, right? Wouldn't you think? You lend the keys to someone else. Bobby Petrino has had good offenses basically everywhere he's been. Now, here's something that was interesting to me. I don't know if you read this. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, the OC position at A&M was open, I think, when he took the UNLV job. And I don't know, it sounded like maybe there had
he was
some contact or not enough contact. Like, how did we go from there was a vacancy and them not connecting the dots then to him taking the job at UNLV and then him taking this job 4 days later?
Yeah, I think it was almost one of those deals where they're like, maybe the red tape with the administration and stuff. Okay, do we want to do this, that kind of stuff? And then maybe, from what I'm hearing, Jimbo kind of stood on the table and said, listen, we need if we're going to compete and we need to have the best out there, I got to be, he kind of pointed to, Kirby Smart's staff, having all the different, coordinators and analysts that they do and all that kind of stuff. You got to be able to go out and get the guys that you want if you're going to be able to kind of turn things around. And so I think that's kind of what they were doing, bringing in Petrino, because we know that there's jokes and we know that all this kind of stuff. But like I said, Petrino can flat coach ball, and that's what he's doing. So,
well, I'm going to ask you the question you asked me. Do you think he can relinquish control? He being Jimbo Fisher.
I think he's going to have to, Chris. I think he's at a point literally where I think there's been boosters and supporters there of Texas A&M be like, listen, to who, if you get biblical for a second, to whom much is given, much is required, and he's been given the much. So they want to see what's required be produced, and he's going to have to do that. And I think he knows that, even as much as it hurts his ego, that his offense has been passed by when it comes to the world of college football today. Heck, that's not a you got to adapt, right? I mean, look at Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's offense a couple years ago, he realized, I got to make a change. What did he do? He went out and got Todd Monken, who totally has revolutionized how they do offensive football. So it's not a negative thing to do that. And hopefully for A&M's sake, that he does relinquish control. We see Mike here vouching for Petrino. He says, hi guys, being an Arkansas fan, he's a good coach. Petrino is. So there you go.
Might you say Jimbo didn't do much with his talents a year ago.
Yeah, squandered, malpractice. Those are
Squandered.
two. Malpractice. That's a word that comes to mind. I mean, geez, goodness gracious.
We could go a lot of places with that.
Guys in the chat, join us in here. Drop your thoughts. What do you think about Jimbo and Petrino and all that good stuff?
Yeah, we do have an Arkansas fan in here, which is a little surprising given the basketball game, although that's at halftime now. By the way, Missouri just ran out on Arkansas quickly. I saw some guys playing for Arkansas there for a stretch. I wasn't sure who those kids were. I guess there's a message being sent through the bench. Florida and A&M tied with under a minute left, and I'm keeping an eye on that. Stuff to talk about. We've got Bobby Petrino. We've got Georgia TCU. We've got a coordinator change at Mississippi State today too, Blayne. Matt Brock has been named the coordinator. I would be lying if I told you I know much about that because that broke not long before we went on the air. We got a thing or two I'd like to get into with LSU football if you're up for that. And here's another thing I'm going to throw out at you. The coaching carousel is always a hot topic, not just for the schools that are targeting coaches, but the carousel that it causes. And I want to throw something out today that I read in The Athletic that maybe we can get into a little bit later. This does not pertain to the SEC directly, but maybe it could. There's been some talk that there could be coaching vacancies at Ohio State and Michigan. And what ripple effect could that have if that happens?
Yeah, and you gotta wonder, hey, coming in hot. Here's Scott Derrick here says Shane Beamer to Michigan if Harbaugh leaves for the NFL. I be honest with you, I don't know. If Shane has that much connection up there. Typically, Chris, you hear the term a Michigan man. They like to go get a Michigan man over there in that case. But I will say this: Shane Beamer has his rabbit ears aside, which we all know that I think he is way too sensitive when it comes to the media. Him and Musselman at Arkansas basketball, I think
I know another coach like that too. But
yeah, I just think they're way too sensitive when it comes to the media. But as far as coaching football, just like we said with Bobby Petrino, how he can coach football, Shane Beamer can coach some football. He can get guys to believe in what he's doing. You've seen the improvement year over year at South Carolina. Now they didn't finish well against Notre Dame in the bowl game there, but when it comes down to it, I think Shane Beamer is a fantastic coach. I don't know if he's quite ready for that Michigan job yet. I don't know if they would come calling this soon in his career, but hey, he certainly acquitted himself nicely, I think, in his first head coaching job at South Carolina, Chris.
Well, you went kind of where I wanted to go. Was there some obvious connection to Michigan there that I don't know about? Because one of the names that popped up in The Athletic today was Mike Hart, who was a running back there about 15 years ago and a good one. So,
yeah, you got to go back and look at, guys that played there. Heck, what happens if Tom Brady retires and says, "Hey, I just want to be the head coach at Michigan"? I'm sure we
could have a Tom Brady-Drew Brees matchup.
Exactly. Well, Drew Brees may never coach again after the absolute.
I'm thinking not. Right.
Ravaging and pillaging that LSU laid upon the Boilermakers. Whoa, 63-7, and it wasn't even that close.
Why is there this trend and move or this push to hire coaches who've never done it before? I mean, just because they're big name. Now, I guess it has worked sort of with Deion Sanders at Jackson State, but I never got that.
Well, I think part of it is
because you're a name doesn't make you a football coach.
Yeah, but I think part of it is the money that's attached to it. Why wouldn't those guys want to push to be coaches? Because they're like, look, I'm going to get this guaranteed contract that if everything goes sideways, I'm getting paid. It's like Ed Orgeron said when the AD brought him in. He said at a coaching clinic, he said, Ed, I think this isn't going good, but we're still going to pay you all your $17 million. Ed said, when do I leave and what door? Because he said he's going to pay you that $17 million to get out of there. So, listen, there's worse things than being paid that amount of money to not coach football.
Well, no, I think you misunderstood me, but it was totally worth it to hear you do your Coach O
No,
impersonation.
I know why you're saying why would the schools do it. I don't know
Right.
why they would do it, but I'm saying I think a lot of it comes because these players, they see this money, the lucrative contracts, and they get their agents who run everything, right? Listen, Sexton runs everything. The agent, he runs everything. He's in contract with all these ADs and all this kind of stuff, and he's playing them off one another. So if they have a former player, whether they've coached or not, that's a hot commodity, all it takes is one or two schools to be interested. And then that's what happened with Deion Sanders, right? You had Colorado, Cincinnati, and USF all clamoring over him, and I'm sure his agent was playing one against the other.
If you're just joining us tonight, this is a free-flowing show. We talk about what the audience would like to talk about, topics we plan on hitting tonight. We've talked a little bit about Bobby Petrino to Texas A&M. Matt Brock has taken the Mississippi State defensive coordinator position vacated by Zach Arnett, who, of course, became the head coach at the passing of Mike Leach. Don't know a lot about him. We've got, again, we talked about potential vacancies at Michigan and Ohio State, something to keep a watch on because there's usually a domino effect. We'll talk the college football playoff title game between TCU and Georgia. We did a preview of that a couple of days ago, but we also said we would update you on injuries and availability issues. So we'll get into that. Let's talk about that for a minute, Blayne.
Okay.
What do we know that we didn't know when we did the preview on, what was it, Tuesday morning?
We know that Darnell Washington was spotted at the Georgia basketball game this evening, walking with no crutches and no boot. So there is a development. And that is not the only development out of that Georgia basketball game. Georgia actually won an SEC basketball game, which is astonishing.
Hey, how about Mike White? Yes, hats off to that guy. Auburn's got some issues. We'll talk about that in the morning with Blake, who's not with us tonight, because he's keeping an eye on basketball while we talk football.
But as far as that, if Darnell Washington is remotely healthy, that's a huge development for Georgia. That would be big because, listen, in that 3-3-5 defense, that 3-3 stack that TCU is going to employ against Georgia, Chris, one thing that, if you can keep it balanced, meaning that you can use two tight ends and you can put one on one side and one on the other and keep that defense balanced, keep them from overloading one side and being too heavy in their scheme in terms of how they slant and how they run blitz. It gives you those gaps, more gaps as a running back to choose from. And I think that'll help Georgia's run game tremendously. You really saw how Michigan's run game struggled after one of their tight ends went out with a shoulder injury. They weren't able to run the football as well. So I think having Darnell Washington there would be huge for Georgia in the run game against TCU on Monday.
On the TCU end, do we know anything yet? By the way, Texas A&M has just beaten Florida in basketball, 66-63. That was a win in Gainesville. So big win for Texas A&M, which is now 1-0 in the league. Did you hear about what happened to A&M before the game tonight?
I did not. Oh, they forgot their uniforms.
They forgot their uniforms.
They
were assessed a technical foul before. Now, if you lose that game by 1 or 2 points, because of that, you're really hacked off. But that's not the way it went down.
Did they just wear like T-shirts with Sharpie drawn on them?
No, I mean, they went back to the hotel and got them. Someone left them at the hotel. That was a new one.
Does somebody on their staff have to wear the bag of shame for the rest of the evening for forgetting the uniforms?
I think that's how that works.
That's how that works. Chris, I gotta ask you something in terms of Georgia and TCU. I was driving for some business today to Alabama and back, and listening to a lot of sports radio, and a lot of people talking about the potential legacy for Kirby Smart already at age 47 if he wins his second national championship here. I mean, if he does that at 47 years old and could legitimately have a third one based, if he 2nd and 26 worked out a little bit better back in the 2018 national championship game, 17th season, 18 national championship game. He could have 3. I mean, are we looking at a guy who's going to end up being talked about in the all-time great college coaches before it's said and done?
Oh, I mean, I think it's way too early for that. He's been a head coach since what, 2016?
That's what I'm saying. But if he wins 2 national championships in his first 7 seasons and has played for 3, that's pretty impressive.
Well, yes. I mean, when you talk about legacy, it's a weird term to use because the guy's, what did you say, 40? How many years old?
47.
I'll go this far, like that gets you in the College Football Hall of Fame, right? For whatever that's
Yeah.
worth. I mean, at a minimum, like if he didn't win a game again, I wonder how many coaches who've won a couple of national titles are not in the College Football Hall of Fame. I'm guessing it's not many.
Think of it this way. They mentioned, contemporaries, guys who've won multiple titles, like even Tom Osborne at Nebraska, right? Well, listen, he had been at Nebraska for 20 years before he won his first national championship. So that's when Kirby has done it in short order here at Georgia. And I think that would be very, very impressive. And let's be honest, it's not far-fetched if you just look ahead to that 2023 schedule for Georgia with all they have coming back on the defense for next year. They play no Alabama. They play no LSU in the regular season. And their hardest non-conference game is Georgia Tech. Chris, they could be sitting at 12-0 going into the SEC championship game very realistically once again next year.
Yeah, I think, again, legacy is just a hard term to wrap my head around given that he's still so new in his career. But here's a better way maybe to phrase it. How many college coaches have accomplished more in their first 7, 8 seasons, whatever it has been, than Kirby Smart if he were to get one on Monday night?
And I know
I don't whatever that list is, I'm guessing you can count that on the number of coaches on one hand.
And I know that people would point out that Kirby probably came into a better program than, of course, Saban had to start off his career, because I think he started wasn't he at Toledo and then went to Michigan State after that. But it wasn't until he was a few years in at LSU, so he would be ahead of that pace of his mentor, Saban, for sure. And having already beat Saban one time to win one of those titles, so I think it's just quite intriguing to see what that is and what that would be like. The other question that people are asking is where would a win on Monday put Stetson Bennett in terms of all-time Georgia Bulldogs in terms of what they've done for the program?
Well, before we tackle that one, a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Stakes. Predict sports better than the crowd for a chance to win NFTs. With Stakes, players can cement their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. Use our invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. And I'll tell you what, Blayne, I will try to put a question in there about Stetson Bennett.
There you go.
In the Stakes app. I'm thinking passing yards.
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett versus Max Duggan, who gets more on Monday. That's probably a good one. I mean, look, Herschel Walker, I think, is going to be the answer to that question until both of us are gone from this earth, because he was such a legend. He was such a different time, and it's harder for guys to get legacies because they leave early, they transfer, all those things, right?
Or is it based off your age?
Well, if it's based off your age, then
you know what I'm saying? No, but literally, I agree with you. But everybody who may be 30 years old and younger is probably going to be like,
I mean,
all they know
with no
Walker
disrespect to Stetson Bennett, that's silly. Herschel Walker was a monster.
He was, but I'm saying
nobody's
don't know who he was except for a Senate candidate.
Well, they need to do their homework because he was unbelievable.
He was
and
him
and
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 Bo
and
Jackson.
had a pro career too. I know that his pro career was, I don't know if you'd categorize it as a disappointment. I mean, he spent some time in the USFL in his peak years, and he was already taking a beating at Georgia. I think,
Yeah.
I think that the amount of carries he took, he didn't break as many breakaway runs his last year or two there. But he had a pretty nice pro career. I mean, unfortunately for Herschel Walker, he's, as an NFL player, he's probably known more as the answer to a trivia question involving a Vikings trade.
Yeah.
But my point is, I don't know that, like, if you're talking the whole body of work, I don't think Stetson Bennett is eventually going to get
Oh,
there. I was reading about him
I'm not
today in the
talking as a
NFL.
player. I'm not talking as a player in town. I'm talking about as like a Georgia legend in terms
Well,
of
look, if they win it on Monday, his face goes up on the Mount Rushmore of Georgia players, right?
yeah. You care to answer that question from Mike
Ooh, I
there?
like
Who was
this
better,
one.
Walker or Bo?
I think it was Bo.
Yeah, I think Bo Jackson. I think
But
Bo
man,
Jackson.
they were maybe the best. Those two and Barry Sanders were probably the best three college running backs in my lifetime. With
No,
apologies to a lot of other great players.
I think Bo Jackson legitimately, and it's hard to do because there's you talk about different sports, Olympic sports, all this kind of stuff. I think there's a legitimate argument that Bo Jackson is the greatest athlete of all time. Like I just
Hey, if you're talking Olympic sports, don't forget Herschel was a bobsledder for a spell.
yeah,
But
and that
but
was
yeah,
the
I mean, look, Bo Jackson was, my goodness. If that hip had not gone bad, there's no telling what that career would have looked like.
yeah, it's insane. What do you guys in the chat? What do you guys want to talk about in terms of tonight? We've got the national championship game coming up. We of course have Bobby Petrino that was hired. We touched on that. Some SEC basketball going on right now. Chris, you brought up something earlier. You said Zach Arnett, hired a defensive coordinator. Here's my opinion with that. I would think that's going to be very much so like a Kirby Smart, Nick Saban situation where, yes, you're going to have a defensive coordinator, but Zach Arnett's still going to be all involved in how that defense runs and things of that nature.
Yeah, and then Matt Brock, reading up on him, he's only 35. Looks like he spent maybe some time with Mike Leach and Pullman. Again, I don't know much about him other than what we just have read in the last few minutes. But
Maybe DC in name only, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, who knows? I don't. What is your opinion on having coaches control offenses and defenses while they're head coaching?
I think it works for some, and it doesn't for others. I mean, I think you see one thing that they brought up on, College Game Day, this past before the Rose Bowl, was that Ryan Day is now at Ohio State's considering relinquishing the offensive play calling duties, and that's after he called a heck of a game against Georgia. Why? Because there's just so much more to manage now as a CEO of a program, whether it's the NIL, whether it's the transfer portal, all that kind of stuff. And then you throw game planning and play calling duties on top of it. It's just hard to do. I think they're going to have to be more of a do that in tandem with someone type thing. And that I think, listen, Lord knows Jimbo's got a lot of NIL things to navigate and transfer portal stuff to handle. So that maybe that's one reason he's bringing Bobby Petrino on, because he literally can't even see straight right now with all the roster transaction moves that he's having to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, football coaching is so different than it was 10, 15 years ago, I think. I mean, it's different than it was 5 years ago or 2 years ago.
No doubt, no doubt. It's changed. It's changed. I'm assuming this is a person who's a rival of Texas A&M. HC Complex is great. Jimbo should stick with it. Jared, what fan base do you root for, man?
Things not said in College Station for 200, please, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good stuff. Listen, guys, too, we like to throw out there's right beside the subscribe button, there's a little membership button that you can join the Just Means More tier, $3.99 a month. It helps us out. It helps us bring more content if you enjoy these streams. Also, we never turn away the live chat, the the
Super chats.
The super chats as well. Yeah, lost my train of thought there. We never turn away the super chats as well. So please join us in here. And like I said, throw your topics in. What would you want to talk about? These live streams we do to be driven by you guys. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit that like, subscribe, notifications, all that good stuff while you're in there. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time, Chris, because not only do you have the national championship on Monday, there's literally, I think another week or so after that, another, little window of the transfer portal opens before the other big window that comes open after spring ball. So you're going to see, as we just mentioned, there's after this national championship game, you're probably going to see some movement even from the Georgia Bulldogs, and that'll, like you said, there's a domino effect everywhere, whether it's coaches or players moving, stuff like that. So it never stops when you're a head coach.
I'm going to throw one at you in that vein here. LSU's got 3 really good quarterbacks, or either really good or thought to have a lot of promise. Jaden Daniels, Garrett Nussmeier, and Walker Howard. Now, Brian Kelly was quoted today in The Athletic. I don't know if this was an original quote or just a story about it there, saying he thought they'd keep all 3, or that I think he might have even said they would keep all 3. Is that possible to pull off in this day and age?
I don't think they're going to keep all 3. He also was quoted saying that Jaden Daniels was their starter and that Garrett Nussmeier would have an opportunity. So I think when you say that early, I think what he's doing is he's just laying his cards out and saying, okay, Nussmeier, okay, Walker Howard, I've said this. Now we'll know if you're going to stick around and compete for the spring, or if you're going to jump in the portal and try to get out when the next window comes open. I'm not saying he's trying to force them out, but I think he's definitely trying to see, okay, where do these guys stand? And because that's going to affect how he handles things. I mean, they've already gotten a guy who's reclassified to the class of 2023 as a quarterback. So, or 2024 as the class of 2024. They've got a 2023 quarterback signed. A lot of different stuff going on when it comes to LSU quarterbacks. But Jaden Daniels coming back. I mean, just look at the offensive production, Chris. I know Garrett Nussmeier has a howitzer attached to the right side of his body, but the mobility now, you see it whether it's – look at the 2 quarterbacks playing the national championship game. Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett can move.
Well, look at Ohio State. I mean, that even mattered for C.J. Stroud, even though he's not known to be that guy. But do you think there's any chance Jaden Daniels reverses course on that? I don't think he's like a high draft pick, but
no, I think he's gonna. I think he knows with what he's done in Baton Rouge that he can take advantage of some NIL opportunities, but based off what he's done on the field, and that it'll supersede a 6th round draft pick, undrafted free agent contract that he can get in the NFL, and who knows, maybe he develops one more year under Brian Kelly under that system, and ends up improving his draft stock for the next year.
We will take your questions and comments here tonight in the chat, which some of you are already doing.
And Scott asked about the play caller. He said, is Heupel the play caller? Yeah, Heupel's the play caller at Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, and that one's working. No need to change that. But a quick word from our other sponsor, Stakes, betting $11 to win 10 stinks. With BROTHROW, you bet $10 to win $10. It lets you bet on all 50 states because it's not the house. Bettors have a fair chance at winning. It is the only sports betting platform that doesn't take a cut of every bet. You don't have to deposit money into a BROTHROW account. No deposits, no minimum bets, no need to connect your bank account. Bettors pay each other directly. There's a hassle-free sign-up process that lets you get in on the action in seconds. Sign up today. You literally, again, can do this in seconds. When you get there, there's a group called Southeastern 14. Ask to join that. We'll let you in. We'll try to get some fun stuff going just within our group. Go to brothrow.com/SE14 and help out the folks who help us. That includes, of course, our presenting sponsor, Stakes. And you can see a little bit more on each of those in our graphic below and probably in the video description when we're done. Blayne, we've hit a lot of stuff tonight.
Well,
Where would you like to go next?
Well, what just was said, it brought up Josh
Oh,
Heupel. It brought up Josh Heupel, and it made me think of there's another quarterback situation, okay? Because Joe Milton, we saw that he can be successful, but Nico Iamaleava, I believe is how you pronounce it. I have not mastered that one. I'm just going to call him Nico. The Spire group that it runs the NIL for Tennessee reports out there that he's getting paid between $8 and $10 million for his services there in Knoxville over his tenure. And if that is even remotely close to accurate, Chris, they're not paying that kind of money for the guy to come in and sit. So I wonder how long that job would be Joe Milton's with that element of things coming into play.
That's a good question, because that's caused some locker room issues some other places where you've got kids getting paid a lot of money as true freshmen to sit the bench. And I say issues, it's not necessarily with the kid that's getting the money. It's with the teammates seeing that and saying, hey, wait a minute. But I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't know how you make Joe Milton your backup. Well, unless the other guy just flat out wins it in spring practice, which is he enrolling in the spring?
He's already there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's already there. He was with them during bowl practice. So the thing about it is, Nick Saban was quoted when he was at a coaching clinic when he was still the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, right? Or he had just taken the Alabama job, but he was talking about his time with Miami, and he was telling coaches, he was like, listen, in the NFL, he was talking about why he likes college, because he gets to develop guys and recruit them and all this guy. He said in the NFL, if the owner called me up and said, hey, we're thinking about playing X player a $10 million signing bonus. What do you think about this? The owner called Saban and said this, and he said, well, I don't think he's worth that. But I will tell you this: if you pay him that, he will be our starting corner. so that's what Saban said. So it's the same principle. These boosters that are doing these NIL deals for these players as inducement, which it shouldn't be, but it is. They're not paying to not see the person play, and they become pseudo owners, right? And that's what you see in the NFL all the time. It's a head coach trying to hold off a highly drafted rookie a lot of times for as many games as he possibly can before ownership tells him, I've had enough. That guy's going to play. Now that's going to creep into Lane Kiffin said it. Lane Kiffin said it at SEC Media Days. He goes, you might as well let coaches be involved in this, because eventually it's going to become where boosters are telling us who to play, if not.
Well, okay, maybe I'm focusing the question in the wrong direction. If you're Joe Milton and you leave spring thinking you might not be the guy, do you hit the portal?
Yeah,
because he's only got 1 year left.
Yeah, he's got a year of eligibility left. Maybe two. I don't know how the COVID year comes into play. That's always, until we get like into year like 2028. I feel like everybody's going to have a COVID year hanging out there or something like that. That could be.
Did you see the tight end at Oregon got a 9th year the other day? Did you see that story?
9th year. That's crazy. I mean, look, Stetson Bennett's 26 years old playing in the national championship game. That kid's going to be that kid at Oregon's going to be 29 years old playing college football. Like it's crazy. How old some of these guys can be. But here's the thing. I just think that where we're at, like I said, with NIL, transfer portal, all this kind of stuff, if you were Joe Milton and you have any kind of inkling that you won't be the guy, or that Nico,
that's what I'm getting at.
That Nico is going to pass you. The question is, with his time crunch, would he be able to find a place that he deems suitable to go to? Because a lot of that quarterback.
Oh, there's a market for quarterbacks. There's a market for a kid with his talent. I get that there are questions that people
I'm
have,
talking about because people have already grabbed people out of the portal already at that point.
There's still a market. There's still a market. Yeah, I mean, I think you might have And I'm just throwing a name out here. That just like you could even have an Alabama level program pay that guy a lot of money just to come, be your backup as an insurance policy. Of course, I guess if you're Joe Milton, then why would you leave a starting job to be a backup? So maybe the question sort of self-destructs, but Milton he's going to be in his 6th year. So I would presume that is it for him. And he's a kid, Blayne, who's got a chance to potentially earn a lot of money at the next level.
Heck,
And he's not going to get it sitting on the bench.
Look at Anthony Richardson. I mean, I would have never thought he's being talked about legitimately as being a first-round draft pick. That blows my mind. That blows my mind.
If someone's willing to pay it, then and I mean he is so much like Richardson in so many ways.
Yeah, talented
and
is all.
That's the other thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say talented is all get out, but at times will give people in the stands concussions because he has zinged an incompletion at Mach speed into their temple.
Well, here's another interesting dynamic I was thinking about today. Like I was looking up a mock draft or the Athletics top 50. Hendon Hooker was solidly in there. I don't think he was a first rounder. I think he was a second rounder. You've got Stetson Bennett. Scouts are saying, or I don't know if it's scouts, but there's been some talk that Stetson Bennett could be an ideal backup quarterback because he retains information so quickly. You see what he's done at Georgia. And a lot of times in the NFL, what's that?
I was going to say the director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, has kind of come out and said he can see Stetson Bennett being anywhere from a 5th to 7th round pick.
Yeah, and what they like, the NFL, the backup doesn't get a lot of snaps, right? And you look at, it was cited what Baker Mayfield did a couple of weeks ago where he joins the Rams on a Monday or Tuesday, and then they win a game on Thursday or whatever that was now. That there's those guys are highly sought commodities just because they can do that. They can memorize playbooks and plays and such and be ready to go without getting reps. And Bennett and this was speculative, that he's maybe a guy that can do that type of thing. But I'm just thinking, like, how weird is the quarterback market gotten?
Yeah.
Because a long time ago, well, there's two things, right? You're seeing guys like Stetson Bennett now and Hendon Hooker getting shots that 15, 20 years ago, nobody would have thought were NFL quarterbacks, or even more recently than that. And that's the other thing. Age has done a lot of this too. It's giving opportunities to guys who would have been out of college or close to it. Now they're maybe first, second, third round picks in many cases. It's just weird how this has so changed the landscape of who's draftable and who's a prospect. And it makes me wonder, like, how many guys out there in the past would have been NFL quarterbacks that never got a chance because the pros were just so closed off to the idea of a guy that didn't look like this and throw like that, and be the age component. It's just a weird dynamic to see all this stuff that's going on with who now is deemed a draftable NFL quarterback.
I'll give you a prime example. I don't know if the Stetson Bennett story ever happens if NIL is around in the 2019 season. It didn't take in effect till 2021 because Jake Fromm could have stayed at Georgia for another 2 years and just cleaned up in NIL money.
The Stetson Bennett has so many what ifs to it, does it not?
He's Jake Fromm was as marketable as any quarterback that you could come across because of what he had done and all that kind of stuff. But he felt the pressure that he needed to go and try to get his NFL opportunity and probably went a year too early is probably what he did. So, there's that. And now he's kind of floundering. He's a practice player for the Washington Commanders. So, that's another layer to all this. Go look at DJ Uiagalelei, who just went from Clemson out to Oregon State. Part of the pressure that came to him at Clemson is because he had a Dr. Pepper commercial before he had ever really done anything for Clemson in this NIL opportunity. And everybody's like, oh, well, here's this guy getting all these commercials and NIL deals and stuff like that, and he just laid an egg against Georgia. Now, they didn't know that Georgia's defense that year was going to be historically great, like in terms of like top 5 all-time college defenses, but that kind of stuff is what's going on. Mike Ridgely says NIL is what he meant there. NIL is ruining college football. It's certainly changing it. I don't know if it's ruining it per se, but it's certainly changing it, Chris.
I don't think it's ruining it. I think it's the combination of things at which they've been thrust upon the game at the warp speed at which they did. It's just introduced too many variables that work in tandem to just make this chaos. Like, I don't have an issue with kids getting paid. I think it's eventually going to be something along the line of a revenue share deal, with the revenues coming from TV money. And the case to watch, and it's escaping me, it's the Villanova running back against the NCAA. They're talking about that one will be decided potentially early this year. And that's the one that's going to potentially open the floodgates for, and it won't be, I don't know if it'll be NIL anymore. It'll just be straight up their employees, and however that works out, it works out. Which, for people that have an issue with athletes as employees, as someone put it, and again, this was just reading something. It's like you've got students that are at games that are employees, manning concessions or whatever.
Yeah.
But the guys on the field aren't. And when you put it like that, it is pretty silly.
Listen, there's going to end up being a players union. It's going to end up being collectively bargained, and it's their television money is going to be dispersed to these athletes. That's it. It'll get to the point where, and everybody will be mad because we all love. It'll get to the point where the players will just go on strike. Is what'll happen if that doesn't happen, and that's what eventually is going to happen. They'll say, okay, well, until we get a piece of the pie here in terms of the TV money, and we're not relying on basically dark money from boosters that want to control the situation and have power in the program, then we're just not going to play, and that's what'll happen. So
well, I think you're looking, Blayne, if they settle this right, I think you could have a fascinating and more competitive era of college football than you've ever had.
Especially with the
playoff.
Yeah.
If you have salary caps, basically, and if you can get it to where you're like the NFL, to where you can enforce, like if you tamper in the NBA and the NFL, those leagues do not mess around.
Yeah.
And you're starting to hear, I think the NCAA recommended this week that they have committees.
Just a little bit, Justin. Just missed a little bit.
Yeah. I think the NCAA, I think, is now recommending that they have committees or something of that sort overseeing sports, or it's going to be a little bit more legislated by sport. I think the money is going to be spread out to where, Michigan, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, the teams that want to play at that big level of football, I'm thinking the teams out, they're going to be Iowa State. They're going to be more on an even playing field. I don't know that it's going to happen in a year or two, but I think it will over time. If everybody's got the same amount of money they can spend, because let's face it, NIL is not NIL. It's pay for play and it's unregulated. But I think if you get everybody on the same page with what they can play or what they can pay, if you start giving players contracts to where, okay, you sign with Georgia on signing day for 3 years and tampering doesn't matter. Now, I guess if a school wants to release you or you flunk out, maybe that's another thing, which that begs a whole other set of questions. But let's just say it is what it is and everybody plays on the up and up. I think you could have potentially NFL-like parity, which we've never seen in our lifetimes. I mean, you're already seeing it this year where, for once, it's not Alabama, Clemson,
well, you're seeing it
Georgia.
Last 2 years.
It's the same 6 teams, and now you've got a little more parity. I think the playoff's going to bring more to that. I think if you salary cap this, for lack of a better way to put it, and attach it to TV revenues, and everybody's playing on the same field, I think the best of college football is ahead of us if they will solve those issues and the tampering. Those are
Yeah,
a lot of big ifs, and they may take some time. I just think there's too much at stake with the game. I think it's too good of a game to let it get ruined. There's too much money to be had for everyone.
yeah. The problem that's going to come in is how the NCAA has it set up in Title IX and the women's sports and some of the lesser sports and all that kind of stuff too. The lesser men's sports, even in terms of attendance and revenue generation and all that kind of stuff. You know, they're saying that the universities rely on that money to disperse and fund the other programs and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to have to be worked out if players start getting
Yeah.
a portion of that and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I think you could
But if you
realistically,
attach it to revenues attached to the sport like TV, then that becomes much easier to navigate. Because you look at women's soccer, you say, well, okay, great. You're welcome to make some money, but here's the revenues. And once you start splitting that up, it's not going to go very far.
yeah. But then what happens if, I mean, sports will literally be cut, like, because sometimes those sports are funded by the money that football brings in or that men's
Well,
basketball.
I mean, that's
Yeah. So
that's a
so
good
that
question.
that's your drawback to some of this. But yeah, it's gonna. I think it's gonna become pro sports is basically what it's gonna become. And then, in terms of the playoff, I do think it's good that teams are going to get more opportunities. I do think that the quality of those early round games a lot of times is going to be terrible. I think they're going to see a lot of blowouts, in those first round games. But probably the quarterfinals and semifinals will be pretty good. Justin wants to know what's worse for college sports, NIL or the portal. I think the way that the transfer portal is done right now is awful, even with the windows that they've instituted. Because I through another venture that I do, I talked to some people in player personnel and stuff like that for some teams, and basically a guy in player personnel told me, he said, Blayne, it's literally like, in the NFL, it's not that bad because everybody is not a unrestricted free agent every year. He said, in
Yeah.
this, everybody is unrestricted free agent every year. So I think what they're going to have to do is they can do I think they're going to have to, they can do you can get a waiver and all that kind of stuff if you meet certain academic standards and all this kind of stuff. They're going to have to add all this kind of stuff in there. And also, I think they're going to have to go back to, sitting out 1 year to deter all this, because the roster movement, I just don't know how you expect a coach to keep up with all that.
Yeah, I think at some point it has to be contracts with very specific outs. I mean, it works like that in the NFL, and you don't see players complain about it because it just is. But I mean, and it's beyond that, right? Because it's not just year to year free agency, because you cannot tamper with players under contract in the league, other places. But in college sports, you can. I mean, the NCAA is basically, I guess, with the O'Bannon stuff, just said, hey, look, we're going to start treating these kids like they are student athletes other places. In other words, if you're at Stanford and you're a med student and Duke wants to call you up and say, hey, Blayne, we got a better opportunity here. We think we got a better med school, pre-med program, whatever. Come on over. You can do that as as a regular college student. Now that would have been forbidden for athletes,
Justin said there's
but
something going on with the super chat. I don't know. Yeah.
that's well. Thank you. That's I like that, Justin. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah.
That's a new one on us. But
Why on Wednesday?
point being, the NCAA has kind of backed off enforcing this because, okay, well, if you're a college student, you have options and people can talk to you and court you even while you're enrolled at another school, and it's all fine. But because you're an athlete, that's off limits, and that's why this has gone the way it has, and why you see teams tamper without any consequence.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you gotta have some rules on that, but it's going to take a lot to get all the logistics of this done, and there's a lot of different pieces. But Chris, I know we got about 10 minutes left here on the chat, and I think you got one more sponsor we need a word from here.
We do, and man, you're going to like these guys, and every one of you out there can use Aura. We are always busy creating great content at Southeastern 14. And the last thing is we need something that takes time and energy from that. I've heard the nightmares about identity and financial theft. As someone who does a lot of business online, I'm always concerned about what's happening to me. Well, guess what? I've started using Aura, and that is one less worry in my life now. We are thrilled that they are sponsoring our show because we want to let Aura help you too. You can see that QR code. You can scan that and get more. Aura protects you from scammers and hackers by scanning the so-called dark web where criminals sell stolen information, looking for your emails, passwords, and social security numbers. It alerts you quickly if it finds anything. You can see that is my Aura account and some of my passwords that it found on the dark web. Good to know, a little troublesome to know sometimes where your stuff winds up, but
Petrino.
I like it. Aura helps you fight back against those annoying websites that make your personal information public by automatically requesting removal of your info. That also helps reduce robocalls, which I don't know about you, I get plenty of those, but not as many now. Aura gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries. Like if someone's opening a loan or a credit card in your name, I can tell you my credit score has gone up a couple of points just from having Aura. Aura's VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. They protect your devices from viruses, malware, spyware, and more so that bad guys cannot break in, or even helps you manage what your kids do on their devices, which I know we need here. You can restrict specific apps, set screen time limits, even focus times to ensure your child is doing homework instead of browsing YouTube. Not that my kids would ever do that. And their password manager lets you store and access your online payments securely and conveniently. Maybe you've got an app that does one of these things, but with Aura, you don't have to download and pay for several separate apps. You can see all the stuff right here that Aura does. You're getting a ton of stuff. You're getting a ton of stuff for that price. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with our link below. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information or finds exposed. You've seen mine already. Just in 2 weeks, go to aura.com/SEC and start your free trial. Again, you can go back and find the QR code. That is a tremendous product. And I'm telling you guys, if you don't have some sort of online security or all these things that Aura does, you absolutely need that. We're proud to have them as a partner and encourage you to sign up for Aura.
Yeah,
okay, Blake, we've got, or Blayne, excuse me. I just called you Blake. Blake's not here.
I wanted to go back to Justin Holland's Petrino pesos here. Where we talked about Bobby Petrino getting the OC job at Texas A&M early to start the show off, but I wanted to circle back to it in terms of saying, listen, Connor Wegman has a rocket of an arm. He's a strong-armed quarterback, highly touted, highly coveted out of high school. And Bobby Petrino loves to push the ball down the field, and he creates space for receivers like Musa Muhammad, Jr. and like Evan Stewart over there. He's going to have fun with those guys. So I'm telling you, a lot of us are having fun with all the neck brace and all the jokes and all that kind of stuff and how things ended at Arkansas. But I think Texas A&M's offense will drastically improve if Jimbo does indeed give him the reins of the offense. And then, of course, Justin said diaper dollars. I appreciate that. We're going through the diapers right now for sure.
Ty Dog raises a good point, and I think this will be factored in the value of compensation, you do get a lot of stuff. Of course, you can say that about the NFL too. The guys sign those contracts, and they don't pay for training staff and stuff like that. But that is a good point. And the value of education will be interesting. I do wonder sometimes if you'll see some of the schools that have degrees that are a little more sought after. If that the playing field could level for that a little bit. You never know when everybody's if everybody's got the same amount of money to spend. It'll be interesting to see
Well, look at
how
like
that changes
Stanford.
choices.
Like Stanford right now,
Yeah.
they don't accept transfers unless you can actually apply and get into one of their graduate programs. And that process is like, from what I understand, like a 3 to 6 month process. So it's just not expedient. And, that hampers, look at where Stanford was 10 years ago, Andrew Luck and all that kind of stuff. They were at the, height of the sport, Jim Harbaugh, all that kind of stuff. And now where they are. So it's very much a have and have nots type game. Justin says with Bobby Petrino, is this a possibility for a ready-made replacement if Jimbo fails next year? Listen, you can probably get Bobby Petrino cheap because of the skeletons in his closet and everything. So that is a factor because the buyout is still going to be enormous, even if they were to fire Jimbo after this year.
You could do a lot worse than Bobby Petrino is your head coach.
I mean, SEC experience, NFL experience, and a really good offensive play caller. So it's not too bad there with them, and we'll see how it's all handled. We got a couple minutes here. Anything you guys want to talk about? I guess I should point out that I did put up on the thumbnail, and we haven't really talked about it. Kentucky, basketball wise, had a big win over LSU. They actually won that game, where they've squandered some away. Jacob Toppin did well. And then of course, how are the Blake's fighting Dennis Gates doing tonight? Did Missouri?
Well, it is slipping away from Missouri as we watch. Missouri was up, I think, 13 in the first half. Arkansas now up 8 with 6.5 to play. And just Missouri is not executing offensively the way it was in the first half, which has got something to do with Arkansas too.
Do you feel like Jacob Toppin and Kentucky are kind of getting things turned around a little bit now, or the latest little stretch they're on here? I know Blake's not high.
No, I don't. I've gone skeptical on Kentucky after getting burned by Kentucky last year, after getting burned on them to start this year. I need to see more than beating LSU by 3 points in a game that almost went the other way.
Does it have anything to do with the Gonzaga Bulldogs? Does it have anything to do with
that? The world's greatest basketball program. I don't hold it against them when you lose to them. So
yeah, they are, and we just have to. And I say we because I'm a lifelong Gonzaga fan, and we're gonna break through one of these years. We got to the national championship twice, so. But
let me ask you. Speaking of Bulldogs, what does beating Auburn at home do tonight for Georgia?
Maybe people actually realize Georgia has a basketball team. That's one. That's one thing. Literally, it was the laughing stock of the SEC under Tom Crean. You talk about malpractice with what Jimbo Fisher did with Texas A&M. Tom Crean was an abomination at Georgia coaching basketball. It was awful, absolutely awful. So Mike White is bringing that same toughness. That team that Tom Crean coached had no toughness. He's brought that toughness that you saw that he coached with at Florida, and also talk about transfer portal. There's an example right there. Georgia revamped its entire roster this offseason through the transfer portal, so it's already paying dividends for them on the basketball court.
Yeah, the point guard transfer from Bradley, who's Terry Roberts, was really, really good for them tonight.
Yeah, so they've really turned things around. People maybe to answer your question, maybe people stop thinking, about the Dominic Wilkins days. That's about the last time Georgia had anything going on basketball.
Comment here from Sam. What do you think of this one?
Kids don't want to be developed, so why does the NCAA reduce
He's kind of got a point.
this or drive players to non-power fives? Kids don't want to wait.
The portal sort of sorts some of that out right now, because you see guys that can't get opportunity transfer to lower levels, but
I think
that would be a more direct way to do it on the front end.
Yeah, I do. It's hard to say. Hard to say.
This is an interesting one, and I know we got to go here in a minute.
Georgia basketball should be better than Georgia Tech.
Well, that's the thing, but people have been saying that for how many decades now? First of all, there's just so much apathy in that fan base, as you pointed out. But I mean, my goodness, the recruiting base for a basketball program could not be much better than what Georgia's got. But they seem to be an afterthought in their own market most of the time there.
Georgia Tech's got a problem because the academics are so rigorous for football.
Is that true though? I don't know that I buy that.
It is. I mean, it's hard to they're not them, Vanderbilt, Stanford. I just don't think it's hard. It's hard to get to a point where you're gonna
Well, Techs are easier than Vanderbilt's, and Vanderbilt's undergrad requirements are not as restrictive as people think. The transfers are harder. Grad transfers are harder.
I'm not talking about getting them in. They can get them in.
You mean when they're there, just the rigors of
because you gotta know how to cheat. You gotta know how to. That's the name of the game. You gotta know how to keep these guys passing. And I don't think the professors at Georgia Tech have been too keen on overlooking some of that.
Yeah, well, that's not the only place that happens. There's some places you're penalized for the faculty for being an athlete. Vanderbilt being one of those. But
I don't think Georgia and Alabama are having to worry about that.
No, I don't think they are.
All right, guys.
Let's wrap it up. Justin, thank you. Yeah, please do hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. That helps us out. We have not set our live stream schedule for the winter. We're still trying to figure that out as we sort of transition from football to basketball. But I think we'll still be playing a lot of football content because it's always football season in the SEC.
Oh yeah, going to be doing football content as we get. We're going to. I haven't even broached this topic with you off screen, but I'm going to say it right now. I think we're going to do an autopsy. I'm going to call it, of each team after the season.
Okay.
And kind of go in depth and look at the year that was, and then as the calendar rolls towards the spring, we will of course look at all the new roster movements, analyze what's been brought in with recruiting, and look at what each team will like to accomplish in spring ball in 2023, and then after that it'll be before you know it, the 2023 kickoff will be here for the season. So
I'll be here for that. And for folks who are just discovering us, we've only really had a YouTube channel that we've run in earnest for about a calendar year now. So we've grown quickly. We're going to we'll cover basketball wall to wall, and we're going to be there for baseball too. We didn't last year because of a medical emergency I had that kept me on the sidelines for 2 months, but that is also coming. Man, we are about 6 weeks out from the start of college baseball.
Yeah, I mean it's the road to Omaha get started here before you know it. So
yeah, and there's a lot of good matchups right off the bat. I was looking in collegiate baseball is, I think, the only one to release its top 25. Actually, they released the top 50. I think 12 of the 14 SEC schools were in that top 50, and I think the SEC had 6 of the top 10.
There you go. I mean,
in the last how many national champions? Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Vandy. And
Yeah,
I think was it Oregon State that won in 2018? I think it was. Arkansas
and
fans will
you're about to add in Oklahoma and Texas on top of that in a couple of years, and that's
right.
two more baseball powers there as well. So big stuff going on there. It just says boo that Dansby. Absolutely. So he was a former Vandy baseball player as well, and former Brave now, who's now with the Chicago Cubs. So but guys, that we appreciate everybody tuning in, subscribe.
Except for that, Justin, we don't appreciate that. Why did you have to do that?
Yeah, everybody needs to subscribe, like, turn on notifications. Chris, take us home, man.
Yeah, Blake and I will have SEC reaction video in the morning of the 3 games played tonight. Texas A&M has won, Georgia has upset Auburn, and Arkansas and Missouri are going to the final 3.5 minutes with Arkansas leading 6 points. 5 points. We will review those in the morning. We'll have previews coming up this weekend's SEC basketball action. We have previewed the TCU Georgia game on our channel. What did we go about 25 or 30 minutes on that one? So we hit about every conceivable angle for that one. We will be wrapping up TCU and Georgia when that's over. And as you said, we'll do those autopsy pieces. That's not a really encouraging word, but maybe the state of the program, it might be a kinder way to put it. We don't want to kill anybody off yet.
The season's dead and gone. That's what I'm getting at. So we're looking at what happened.
If Georgia wins the whole thing, are we calling that an autopsy?
Yeah. I mean, season's still dead. Season's still gone. What happened? I guess.
Did your kids get cold for Christmas?
No, we're good. We're good. We're all good over here. But listen, I appreciate everybody. Justin's right. Join the membership, subscribe, turn on notifications, and Chris, you don't have anything else? I guess we'll see them all next time.
Well, final thing. Thank you to our sponsors, Aura, to our presenting sponsor, Steaks, and to BROTHROW, our new partner. We're very excited about all 3 of those partners. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. That helps us out tremendously. Thank you for all who were here. God bless you all. Have a great evening.